Welcome everyone. Today we have a new guide for Diablo 4 and I'm quite excited to share this guide with you guys because we'll be looking into everything with crafting your best in slot items for any of the class. So here we're at NPC with the Oculist, and what I have is I have taken some time, quite a bit of time actually, writing some detailed notes for you guys about the step-by-step process of how to craft in Diablo 4. And this not only works in beta, this will work in endgame as well once the game launches. So I really want to go through this in details with you guys because there's a lot of things you might not know, like rolling for rare items before making them into legendaries, and also what to put on the weapons, what should be reserved for the best in slot codex, and what are the things you might not know that you cannot extract again after crafting items. And also there's other tips and also bonus, tricks I found at the end of the video as well, which I'll share with you guys. So quite excited to make this video for you guys, and let's get into the video. Now, because the crafting system in Diablo 4 is actually more complex than what it seems, so I really want to write some detailed notes and use the in-game footages and also demonstrations to show you guys. So if you do get a little confused, please bear with me. I'll try to explain everything very clearly and make sure you guys get every part of it so you can craft any item you want with any codex. So the first thing is, you want to be farming for your legendary codex and also aspects. Those are very different. So the codex you have, if you press Y over here, what you're going to see is you can see the codex power. Those are the codex you obtain from opening up the dungeon and defeating the dungeon for the first time. And you can see I have quite a lot of them. So you can see on the map there will be dungeons over there, and once you clear them for the first time, you can get a codex. So this is codex. The second thing is aspects, is actually the legendary who is extracted. So let's say if I wanted this legendary effect for the berserking effect that inflict bleeding damage. So if I extract this aspect from the legendary, the stats of the roll of 34% will stay. And those rolls are always higher than what you get from the dungeons. The dungeons will give you a minimum roll, while the items you extract from the legendary items will give you a random roll that is usually not minimum. You can also roll a very high roll. Now, because the legendary affix effect from the dungeons and the minimum rolls, so what I'll do is I'll show you guys an example. That's just why we don't craft with those codex unless we really have to. So I'll show you guys the example over here. The lucky chance of getting 20 fury with 30% with rend. This is the minimum roll. But if you over here have a look at this particular ring over here, this actually says 40% chance to gain 20 fury. So this is the aspect of the legendary, and if you're crafting from the codex, you only get 30%. So do keep in mind, this is why I recommend crafting from legendary items instead of codexes. So it is always better if we're crafting, we want to use the aspect instead of the codex, and this is the first highlight. And what you're going to see here is you have two options, right? If you put a golden weapon in, you have an option of using the codex, or you also have an option to use the aspect. Now do keep in mind, an item that is extracted from a legendary aspect, this aspect can only be used once. You cannot use this to craft a legendary then extract this again. I'll show you guys very soon on the next part. So what you really want to do is you want to find a lot of legendary items because they give you better rolls of the codex, and also they give you better affix. So you want to be farming dungeons and also killing world bosses. We do have a video here about me gearing up fast, every ways I can do it, but I didn't include the world boss. So make sure you do come over to this video for more details on this part. And let's come over to the next part. So after knowing the codex and also the aspects, what you want to do is you want to start farming for rare items. What I mean rare items is going to be the golden items over here. So you can see the golden item over here, like this item with item level 323. And this item, you can see it is a little stronger than my current weapon. And what you're looking for is, you're looking for weapon with sockets and also with 3 good affix. So here we have plus 15 strength, it's okay. Plus 6% damage to slow enemies is okay. 3.5% damage over time, it is okay. It's not the best roll, but it is a decent roll, then I may be considering crafting this into a legendary with special affix. Now, finding rare items and also keeping them is going to be very important throughout the game. During the beta at level 25, you'll be looking for item level over 320. So here this item level is over 320, you can see it's 323, and those items seems to be in a better stats of roll. And of course at the end game you probably look for some other item level, which I'll make the guide for you guys. So once you have item level 320, eventually you can craft them into item level 340, like this weapon was crafted. So the next thing is, Once you look for a good affix and also good potential rolls and also a weapon with socket, what you also want to do is you also want to consider enchanting your rare item before crafting this into a legendary. So what I mean by that is, let's say if I'm crafting this item with a Codex, this one, I'm just showing you, maybe I'm doing a rogue one. So if I'm crafting this one before I click this button, because once I click this button, you'll be converted into a legendary. And then if you still want to come back to enchant an item, like rerolling for one of its substats, you cannot do it cheaply. So this is the cost of a legendary reroll. What it's going to cost is, it's going to cost a fiend rolls. And those are much more rare items. What you want to do is, you want to be rerolling your rare item first, because this only costs a basic Veiled Crystals. So once you reroll the stats, then you craft this item into a legendary. So this way you don't have to reroll when it becomes a legendary. This is much cheaper this way. And finally, while looking for your golden rare items, you also want to look for 2 sockets on the two-handed weapon. So you can see currently this weapon only have 1 socket. Sometimes two-handed weapon can have 2 sockets. This weapon also have no socket. So if you're looking for a rare item, one-handed weapon only have 1 socket, a random roll, and the two-handed weapon can have up to 2 sockets. Even when it's a rare item, it can have 2 sockets for the two-handed weapon. So do keep in mind, if you're looking for the best installed items, you want to min and max for the best item in the game. Now that we talk about where to find what codex and also aspects, and also how to find rare items, the next thing is, what codex do you apply onto what weapon, and what are the categories of codex? So I have found a lot of resources and a lot of guides I want to show you guys. The first one is going to be about the codex, so many to find. So here we have a Maxroll GG summary, and I'm just using Barbarian for example. This works for all the class. Codex are usually separated into 5 categories: defensive, offensive, resource, utility, and mobility. What you want to notice is some of those items and some gears have a special item requirement that you can apply the codex or the aspects on. So for defensive items, it's all the armor pieces and also amulet. For the offensive pieces, you can apply those on the gloves, weapons, especially two-handed weapon, which will have double effectiveness. So what that means is, this particular weapon with a codex of 200%, if this was on a one-handed weapon, this will only be 100% effect. And if this was on a gloves, this will also be 100% effective, instead of 200 effective, 200%. So this is a very important part. This is how we craft the best in-slot offensive aspects and also codex onto the best weapons. Now, just as a little summary for you guys, for the offensive, we can go for weapons for sure. And also for defensive, it's armor and also amulets. For the resource generation, it's rings and amulets. And finally, for mobility, you can go on to boots and also amulet. So right away, you can see the amulets is actually a universal item that is in the game that can go on to almost all the codex. And this also provides additional 50% effectiveness. So this is the second best thing compared to the two-handed weapon. And this of course comes to our next point. So this is the bonus effectiveness on the Codex Affix and also legendary aspects. And you really want to look into the best installed two-handed weapon and also amulets, because those provide 100% and also 50% effectiveness. So what I did was, I do have a recording, and I'll show you guys a recording of me transferring a Codex legendary onto this particular weapon for my Thorn build. So coming over to this replay, you can see I'm currently having a gloves. I'll show you guys the gloves over here. So here is the stats of the gloves. I found this one at a very low level for the rogue. You can see the item level required is level 4 and the stats are not very high. But the rolls of the legendary aspects is actually pretty good, 28% effectiveness of AoE thorn damage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract this one, and once I extract it, I'll be crafting this onto the two-handed weapon I prepared. So here is the effectiveness, right? You can see we want to go onto the two-handed weapon for the highest double effectiveness. And of course guys, before I craft the weapon, I'm actually going to reroll on the weapon stats. What I'm thinking is I have 19% damage, 40 strength, and also the critical strike damage. I'm not doing that much critical chances, not that many critical strikes, so I'm going to reroll this one. Notice I'm rerolling before I craft it. And here, of course, it's going to bump to your account once you do this. And here there's multiple choices. You can keep the current stats of the 12% critical damage, or you can keep the new ones you roll into. And do keep in mind, sometimes I do think you can roll into sockets, I'm not 100% sure, but do keep in mind for some weapons, they can roll very high with bonus damage. For me, it is 19% bonus damage to close enemies, which is really good, right? So I was looking at this, I was like, hey, that's actually a really power up. So we take this one, and now the weapon is ready to be crafted into a legendary. So let me just show you guys what happens. Now I'm not going to enchant again. Notice the enchantment cost also goes up after enchanting it once. So the more you reroll, the more costly it becomes. And here what you're going to see is I extracted the aspects from the gloves and I'll be putting that onto the weapon. And this is ideally the best way to craft the best in slot weapons for your build. And notice previously it was 28%, now doubled into 56% proc rate. And this is going to be amazing for my thorn build. If you haven't seen the previous video, it's actually really good. And that's how I crafted. And you know, I was double checking it. So make sure you double check, because once the Codex over here is crafted onto this weapon, you cannot extract this weapon to do it again. I'll show you guys what I mean in game. So if we come over to extract, and notice that some of the legendaries I can extract, but the item that was crafted previously cannot be used to extract again. So you can't reuse that infinitely. So notice those two items was crafted and you can't use those. And those legendaries were dropped for me. I can use those once to extract them and craft in the way you saw before. Now to summarize the whole point of point 3 and 4, what you're going to do is you want to look into the best in-slot offensive weapons for any of the class for two-handed build, because this gives 100% effectiveness. And ideally this should be the core of your build. For me, the core of the build for the Thorn build is AoE Thorn damage. And in case you guys are wondering what is going to be the core build for your build, when I make the build, I'll talk to you guys about this. So if you come over to the build calculator, you can see here for the Thorn build, this is going to be the core. Notice here it only has 20% because this is the minimum roll on the Codex. You roll higher if you get legendary items and also aspects and extract them. But you can use this multiple times, right? So for any of the build, let's say if you go sources and if your particular build, if your offensive is gonna be Ice Shard. So if your core build is going to be Ice Shard, what you're going to do is you can pick this one for your core build onto a two-handed weapon, and this can be very good. So this is going to be the best in-slot focus for your weapon crafting. Now similarly, you can do the same method for amulets, because amulets also provide a 50% bonus. So this will be the secondary best in-slot for you to craft your Codex. And let me see the example we have on the side over here. So let's say if I'm going with Barbarian, and my second best in slot for Thorn, let's see. So second best in slot for Thorn, let's say if I'm doing like the Berserker build, I also want to gain Thorn while Berserking. So the 100% bonus effectiveness will go onto the two-handed weapon, and then 50% bonus Thorn will go onto the amulet I'll be crafting with the Codex of the aspects. Now while picking weapons to craft, I also want to notice to you guys about the weapon bonus choices. So what you want to do over here is the Barbarian have a pretty interesting, unique way of the Codex choices. So let me try to show you guys over here. So for the Barbarian, there's the arsenal system. So when Barbarian use certain weapons, they also have bonuses. Let's say if I'm going with the bleeding build, then bleeding is actually really good to have a two-handed sword for the bleeding build. So this is something you want to notice. And for the pole army, deal more damage to healthy enemies. Now for the other classes, there is also weapons with bonuses. For example, bow will deal more damage to distant enemies, and daggers deal more damage to close enemies. Staff will deal more damage to control enemies, and wands will deal increase lucky chance, lucky hit procs. So those are the bonus to your weapons. So do also consider this when you're crafting your rare into legendaries. Now once we have crafted our best in slot weapons in the game, for Barbarian there's two of them rather, two-handed weapon, you look into the one-handed weapon for the offensive craftings, and over here I basically went with the skill dealing 24% more damage based on your primary resource, which is actually really good. After this, you can look into your rings and also your armor pieces. Now do keep in mind, you can also crafting offensive Codex onto your gloves, so this is quite important. Because usually we go with offense first, right? So coming back here, you can see that on offense, you can also have gloves. And this is the armor piece that you can have, which is very good. Other codex will also be, resource, utility. And to know the difference between what codex you have belongs to what category, come over to the tree and look for the ones you have. Let's say if you have something quite straightforward, which is going to be aspects of shared misery. What you're going to see is this one is going to be available for all the classes, and this one's going to be a utility one. If you want to spread your crowd control, you come back over here, and what you're going to see is actually you come back over here. So you look at utility, which pieces can you put this on, and those are the availabilities. Sometimes pieces can overlap. You can craft utility on gloves, or you can craft utility on you can craft offense on the gloves. So make sure you pick which one to craft after the weapons for the most benefits. But of course, your amulets and also your two-handed weapons should always be crafting offensiveness. Now, in order to help you guys to make the best in-slot weapon for any of the class, we talk about rerolling your rare item stats, the enchantment, and the oculus. So you want to reroll your golden items over here. I'll just give you guys a quick summary. Once you reroll those, and once you craft that into legendaries, there's two places you want to go. So the first place you want to go will be the jeweler. The jeweler here will upgrade your existing accessories, and this can give you bonus stats. This also increase the item level, and this also give you can see the bonus. It's not a lot, and also it's more costly with gold, but this will be the final perk to upgrade your perfect items, whether it's in the beta or in the endgame. And of course, this only upgrades the jewelries, so 2 rings and also the amulet. But at the same time, you can also craft your weapons over here. So make sure you also finish this off. And this is because you get a more bonus and also more effectiveness. So over here you can see certain items over here can also be upgraded at the blacksmith. So all the items over here, armors and also weapons, can be upgraded. And sometimes they give really good stats. For example, over here I gain a lot of movement speed, and as the more you upgrade, you gain more of those perks. So this will be the final step into upgrading the best in slot. Now, something I do also want to mention at the jeweler is that you can add sockets to your existing items. So for example, you can add sockets to your weapons and also, two-handed weapons, one-handed weapon. Two-handed weapons can have 2 sockets, while one-handed weapon can have 1 socket. And also all of your pieces of gear can have 1 socket. Now, I did loot 2 of the scattered prisons in the open beta, but I can't find more of them. And I used my prisons onto my existing pieces for my thorn build, so those actually have more thorns. So just keep in mind of those, and those are the socketing of items. And this is quite important, because once you socket items, especially for the thorn build, you become incredibly powerful. So make sure you finish off with socketing items as well for your perfect build. Now before you go, and if you guys didn't know, we have a new YouTube channel. So I just started a YouTube channel with my girlfriend yesterday, and you can see this is only 12 hours old, this YouTube channel. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and check out the behind the scenes and also fun clips and also more stories about us. And then you get to know me a little more personally instead of just reading the news and also the games, right? So I want to share a little bit more with you guys. So make sure you check this channel out if you're interested about Matt and also Uni. She's really funny too, and she's really shy. So I want to give her a surprise and do a shout out for the new channel to get some subscribers. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.